Coach Seth here with 5-Star Life. I used to be so shy, hide behind my parents, didn't want to make eye contact, didn't want to talk, afraid to walk into rooms. And I discovered that I could change my personality and start to adapt who I was and how I came across to this world. We're going to unpack this whole conversation on today's show. Can you change your personality? And what personality traits do you want to adopt? Get ready. Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined not in studio, but via Zoom again with my co-host, Coach Mia. Welcome back.
Thanks, Seth.
If you just tuned into the show, really want to encourage you to go to the 5-Star Life YouTube and visit us so you can watch us. It's kind of a cool feature. We video this thing. But you can also listen anywhere podcasts are streamed. And if you've just tuned into this for the first time, somebody shared it with you or you stumbled across it, thanks for tuning in. It's going to be a great show. But check us out at 5starlife.org. We're on a mission to change the face of education, of sports, and of culture. And we've been doing that for 19, going on 20 years already, Mia. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it.
So we're going to have a great show. And before we dive in, we're talking about personality. And it's weird how we talk about a lot of things in life. We talk about, our homes. We talk about our clothes. We talk about food. We talk about health and nutrition and exercise. We don't often talk, like, when's the last time you sat around talking about your personality with people? It's one of those unspoken things that it's just like you just judge other people's personalities and you either like to be around them or you don't like to be around them, or you like them in certain, when they're in certain moods, and then when they shift to other moods, you're like, okay, I'm going to steer clear. But it's one of these unspoken things that if we could have dialogue about it and if we could put that on the table, I believe that we could grow and change and evolve and not stay where we were. And I've talked about this before, Mia, that there's a study that said the average emotional quotient of an individual, we talk about, your IQ, your intellectual intelligence, but your emotional intelligence. The average adult's emotional intelligence is that of a 13-year-old. In other words, how we interact with people, our personality, our moods. We are 13. The average adult is like a 13, stuck at 13. And ultimately, I don't think that's like a great number to be stuck at, probably. That's like being stuck in middle school. So I think this show is going to be fun to unpack, like, okay, how do we move beyond that and grow and look at some of those spots?
Can I ask you a question about self-awareness? Do you ever find that, like, maybe you react to something and you think, oh my gosh, that was my 13-year-old self? Are you like past that?
Oh man, I have matured beyond 13 most of the time. But there's times, like, even my 3-year-old self, my 3-year-old personality comes out once in a while. And my wife is just like, wow. She'll just say wow and just say, okay, I think I'm going to go in the other room right now. So there's some moments that and I'm just left to sit there and kind of deal with, like, well, okay, what am I doing? She's saying, wow, I think she's being insensitive, but I'm in my feelings right now. And I'm in my middle school self. Thankfully, I've got a wife that she holds me accountable. Like, she doesn't let me stay there long at all.
I think that's the key to moving, forward with your personality too, is having people around you that hold you accountable. But I think it's interesting because you do have to be self-aware and know that you kind of have those triggers to change.
100%. In my kids, I have a 21, an 18, and a 15, and they have followed suit, and they're right behind my wife. So if I have any kind of a reaction that's not 5-star, they will call me out so fast and so furiously that, and I love it. It's absolutely, and usually it's like funny. Sometimes it's not. I'm like, oh, okay, and then we'll laugh later. But I think that's a beautiful thing to have as family, if you can receive it. And isn't that the hard part, receiving that kind of feedback?
Yeah. And I mean, I've grown in that area too, but man, that would be like my 3-year-old self, where you'd just be like, oh, like, how dare you say that? And I wouldn't receive it. Now I can quickly turn that around, but.
Okay. So can you, a part of quickly turning around for me is trying to make light of it and just like, okay, I'm not staying there. And we'll laugh about it, or we'll joke about it. When I'm at my best, that's the goal, is that we can flip it. I can apologize. We can laugh about it. How do you handle those situations?
I can't say humor is part of it. I just try to change my response. I mean, like today, I hurt my back. I'm in a lot of pain, and I reacted to something like a child, and I just began to cry. And I was like, oh my God, like, pull it together. And I said, nope, it's okay. Yep, we're going to change it. But, so I have to do something to like redirect myself.
And I think you bring up a great point. So, because pain, that is one of the great X factors in personality, because when we're hungry, when we're in pain, when we're going through something, I mean, that flips our personality alone.
I mean, for me, those are all triggers. They say hangry and it's funny, but I mean, it's real.
Yeah. How have you dealt with that? I mean, how have you learned to deal with, because you've had pain here and there in your life, and which there's so many people that are in pain, and it's very easy to just say, well, I'm in pain. I'm an angry person. I'm in pain. Like steer clear of me. Now, my wife has dealt with pain as well. And I think there's a point when you want to be sensitive to people you love, where you want to give them grace in those periods. But how do you, a person that I'm so grateful that I haven't had to deal with a lot of chronic pain, but having never experienced it from your experience, how have you learned to deal with that and not let that be the cop out to have a miserable personality to the people around you when you're in pain?
Yeah, I guess as I get older, I think of other people's situations that are far worse than mine. That kind of puts it in perspective for me. And you know what, too, nobody wants to hear about it. I mean, that sounds terrible, but you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry about your back. Say a prayer or whatever. But it's like every time you call me, you don't want to be like, oh, Seth, you're not going to believe this. Nobody wants that. And I don't even want it. So.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. So this is going to be a fun show. And Arnold, you're going to have to help me on time, because I forgot to start my timer. So just count me down when I'm close. So this whole idea of shaping your personality, there is so much to be discussed on this path, and how we come across to the world, how we interact with the world. So much of it comes down to living by the 5-star value of respect, which we define as treating others the way you yourself want to be treated, like just treating others the way you want to be treated. And ultimately, one of the great shapers of personality is just our focus and our obsession with self. We're so focused on us. And so when you think about relationships, we often, when you think about the foundation of a lot of relationships, it's either because the other person is very selfish, or because we can only think about our needs and what they're not providing for us and what we don't like about that interaction. And I'm not saying we shouldn't evaluate friendships and the give and take of relationships, but when it comes to our personality and how we interact with the world, I've found that respect is a foundational piece. And if you have that at your core, it is personality shaping. Because if I value you, Mia, if I respect you, and when I'm interacting with you, I'm thinking about how can I bring value to Mia? And oh my gosh, she's an amazing person, so I'm going to make sure I honor her and value her. It's going to shape like how I interact with you, how I come across to you. If when I'm around you, all I'm thinking about is myself and man, I really want Mia to do this for me, or I really want to impress Mia, I'm just thinking about me. I'm not aware of the other person. And so I think when you have the other person in mind, when you're around people and you're thinking, man, people are amazing. And how do I give back? How do I love? How do I honor the people in my life? It changes the way we come across. And we'll unpack a little more of that in the next segment. We'll be right back after this.
Did you know that you can bring the values, lessons, and mindsets Coach Seth discusses on the 5-Star Life podcast to your local community? Schools are searching for programs and content that work. Just a simple introduction to your teacher or principal could be a game changer in your community. Inquire at 5starlife.org and someone from our team will be in touch.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined with my co-host via Zoom. Welcome back, Coach Mia.
Thanks, Seth.
So we're having this conversation about this whole topic of personality, which some people refer to our personality as our personal reality, which I like that play on words because our personality is really an expression of our reality. The moods we're in, how we come across, and how we experience this thing called life. And, you know, it's amazing. A big part of our personality is going to set the tone for the types of friendships we have, for the interactions we have, which, and this is important, you know, human connectedness and connections, relationships are foundational for our physical health. So there's so many studies that say people who have strong relationships, they live longer, their quality of life is better, and there's some telltale signs. People that have long-term friendships, people who can interact and laugh and have, it doesn't have to be a huge group of people. It can be one or two or three people that you just connect with, that you're supported by. So there's massive health benefits, mental health, also those statistics, like people who have those strong relationships have less anxiety, less depression, less suicide ideation. So like there is, I know, and I'm not knocking therapy and all that the medical field can offer, but I'm telling you what, relationships, strong relationships are healing. But what role does our personality have in making and breaking and forming relationships? A big part, according to research.
Great question.
So, you know, kids are so vulnerable. They'll say things like, well, I'm awkward and I'm, you know, socially, you know, awkward. I'm anxious. I'm shy. I'm not good with people. And we always tell kids, like, you're a kid, so you're developing your personality. And I would say the same thing to adults. You can mold your personality. So whatever the things that you think you're deficient in, if it's being shy or being awkward or being afraid, or whatever those quirks are, that we all have our quirks, right? We all have our stuff. But I would just encourage people to not get stuck there. I would say something very simple. In order to connect, I heard this years ago and I thought it was brilliant, but if you want to work on being a better person at connecting, there's a saying that goes like this: the most interesting person in the room is the most interested person in the room. And sometimes we're so awkward or shy or hung up because we're overthinking, we're trying to like think about how we're going to be and how we're showing up, instead of maybe just putting all of our emphasis on others. And that was helpful for me. I used to really not like walking into rooms full of people because there can be an awkwardness. And I had to flip the script and say, okay, I'm going to shift this. I don't know, why am I afraid of walking into a room full of people and just showing up as myself? Why is that? And I realized because I was just thinking about, like, what do I need to do? Like, what I was thinking about all the maybe all the fears that could come up, like, what are the expectations of these people in this room? Like, what am I going to need to do? Am I going to stand out? Am I going to be dressed right? Am I going to fit in? Like, we can kind of check out of the social realm because we're overthinking. Our brain is on overload. And I've found that getting rid of all that noise and just simplifying, just thinking like, okay, I'm not walking this room. How can I love people and just be an encouragement? How can I enjoy the people that God puts in this room and just be a blessing? So instead of thinking about me and either connecting or impressing or looking right or acting right, I started to throw all that out the window, and that was super helpful for me. And maybe that's natural for other people.
So you're saying like you go into a room and you're thinking like, I'm going to ask questions like, what do these people do? I'm like, you're excited to kind of get to know these people to give to other people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So instead of trying to think about me and just be interested in me and worrying about how they approach me or look at me, my whole focus is shifted. And now I do this like on cruise control. I walk in and I'm just interested, like, who's going to be in here? I'm just curious, like, who's so. The change goes from walking in, being in me, to walking in and just like, who's here, and who are they, and how can I benefit them? How can I make I have a power statement every day I start my day with, where I say something good is going to happen to me and through me today, and that's a part of my daily power statement or declaration. And so when I walk in a room, it's way more fun to walk in a room like, okay, I'm going to do something for somebody in this room. Like, how can I'm going to listen for the opportunity. And I'm going to connect with people. I'm going to make eye contact. I'm going to start with my body language. I'm going to be open for business. And so when you're interested, all of a sudden you're thinking of things like being open for business. In other words, my face is up, my head is up. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not looking at my feet. I'm making eye contact. I've got a warm look because I'm just interested and curious. And I know the power of a smile. I know the power of positive body language. So it's like kind of fun to walk in knowing that you can, like, there's science that backs us up. Like, you can walk in and change the whole dynamics in a room just by how you walk in, which is fun.
I was going to say that because you do change the dynamic of a room when you walk in, because you're always the first one to, go to the group that we don't know and shake their hands, ask questions, ask names. You do a great job of that.
Well, thank you. And it was not natural. Like, and that's why I'm saying this, because I used to think, oh man, that person has such a dynamic personality and they are so good with people. And I still do that. I admire people. But I used to think like, oh, that's just them and I'm just me. I wish I was more like this. And as I started to do the research, I'm like, this is so cool. I can grab the best of people's personalities and I can absorb that and I can learn and add that to my personality. And so I have grown tremendously from a person that would just keep to myself when I walked in a room. Somebody approached me. I was friendly. I wasn't mean, but I did it. There's some points where people just say, dude, your face when you walked into that room was like closed for business. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just me. And that was my mentality. I'm just me. And that's the mentality that would have kept me stuck as that version of me. And the fun part for me is like, I'm not limited to that version of myself. I can keep growing and evolving. And I think the big misunderstanding is like, no, that's just who I am.
Right. Well, it's kind of a cop-out. So then you don't have to change.
I think so. Okay, so I've talked about, some illustrations that I use. How have you learned to do this? Because I know you're the same way. You walk in a room, you do the same thing, and you've got this dynamic going. How have you learned to do that? Is that natural or?
Not at all. It is probably one of the things that I hate the most to do. I have to push myself, and I'm still not great at it, but I do try. But yeah,
You fake it well because it seems natural.
not at all. Inside, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think one of the things that you're really good at, though, to connect with people in a room is you're vulnerable. And you'll say some funny things that are just kind of off the cuff because you're just being real. And I think that connects people. Like you'll say, oh man, that was awkward. Or you'll say, oh man, I didn't mean to do that. And it's just kind of lightens the mood and it creates connection. You're really good at that.
I want my high fives that are awkward, or what is it? The fist pump, whatever. I'm so bad.
I don't know. It's just you are open in your personality, and that I think it's freeing for people, and then people are drawn to that. Okay, we got to take another break. In this next segment, I'm gonna jump into a situation where I met some people that they totally were uninterested in me, and it just changed the way I looked at them. So we'll unpack that when we come back after this.
5 Star Life is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to changing the face of culture by changing kids' mindsets. Since 2005, we've impacted hundreds of thousands of lives thanks to the generous support of individuals, small businesses, corporations, and foundations. Are you interested in helping 5 Star Life grow into all 50 states? With your donation or introduction, you can help bring 5 Star Life to your community, school, and state. Go to 5starlife.org and send us an email today. That's FIVEStarlife.org.
Welcome back to the 5 Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth. I'm joined in studio with Coach Mia, who's joined us via Zoom.
Hey, I don't know where that came from.
Just part of your dynamic personality. Hey, that'd be a great. So we're talking about personality, our personal reality, and we're challenging kids who have record-breaking anxiety and depression and social anxiety. We're trying to teach kids that they can develop their personality, that it's not fixed. So if there are parts of their personality that they don't like, look at those areas, identify them, and then start to make changes. And we're specifically talking about this whole idea of how do you create connection and how are you with people. And the key is in really truly showing respect and respecting and honoring the people around you. And the key to that is really understanding, like, the most interesting person in the room is the most interested. And when we can get our eyes off of ourselves onto others, that's what creates connection. And I remember I was probably 19, and I remember meeting this guy who was, and this is all through church, and he was interviewing for this position. I was interning at a church. I was doing an internship with youth ministry. And they were hiring a new youth pastor. And so this guy came in and super dynamic, super high energy. And, he met with all the interns, and I met him, and he was great. He was fun. He was funny. And then what happened was the next week came, and there was like maybe 3 or 4 interns, so not a big group. And he didn't remember my name. And not the end of the world because, they just met. He had a lot on his mind. But then, so we reintroduced ourselves. And then the next week he came back and he still didn't remember my name. And then the next week he couldn't remember my name. And I was like, this guy, it wasn't just his not remember my name. It was like whenever he spoke to me, it was like he was just trying to get past me to get to the next thing. Because he would never stop to remember, and I noticed he was doing that with other people. And it was like this dude wanted to come, and he wanted to make sure he was speaking. He wanted to be great up front in front of people. Then it was with people. He wanted to be the center of attention. He wanted to make people laugh, but there was no interaction with others. And I was watching this just like a fly on the wall. And I'm like, that is something. I hope I don't do that. I don't want to be the guy that comes in and is just all the noise and the center of attention, and then leaves, but doesn't connect because he's so focused on his image or on how he comes across. He's not interested in the people, in the people, not interested in the people. That was cringy to me. And I think we've all met some people that they're dynamic, they're great at first, but then you're like, I always look at those people and like, they have no substance. When it's not true. They have a lot of substance. They have a lot to offer. They're just not interested.
There's also those people that are talking to you and they're looking past you or, constantly scanning the room and you're like, hello, I'm right here.
Yes. So, one of the great personality shaping characteristics I want to adopt and I try to adopt is being that interested person. So there's those people that we all know, that we've met. Hopefully we have a friend like this, that whenever you're with them, it's like you're the only person in the world. And that makes us feel so special. We love that person and we think that person's amazing, even if they're not an amazing person, just because they're interested. Isn't it crazy how we judge people? We judge how smart they are. I mean, people who like us and are interested in us, they are smart, they're wise, they're all these things just because they're interested. Because our really at our core, what we greatly need is to be loved and accepted.
I think so much of that too is shaped when you're a child. We laugh about it, but being the baby, you're like, gosh, by the time, out of 5 of us, my mom was exhausted. So I got the least of her. So as a parent, gosh, you're running, but it's a hard thing, but you have to be that, person and be interested in because our kids, they're rambling about something, but there are times that you're just like, you know what, I need to listen, and give them my, full attention. And I think my grandkids have been great at that because they demand my attention. Like they will take your face and it's like, Mimi, listen.
That is good. And usually with kids, younger kids, it's usually like a moment. It's not like it's not like they want to stay there just perched, just talking your ear off for a long time. It's usually like they'll stay there until they're heard. And so the quicker we can give them our attention, the more they'll receive the love and what they are trying to get from us. And I think people are the same way. And so this is just one of those personality shaping tweaks that if we can just learn to be in that moment and be interested, and interested people, when you're talking, they ask questions, right? They ask follow-up questions like, what do you mean by that? Explain that to me. And I mean, just really simple, open-ended questions that draws more of it out because they really want to know. And if we really don't want to know, that's just revealing that that's part of our issue, our personality defect. If we don't want to know something about people in our lives, then we probably have a high emphasis on self. And we probably respect ourselves a lot, our own time, our own agendas, our own passions, just listening, not really listening, but really just buying time until I can talk. So while the other person's talking, I'm not really being a great listener to absorb, to learn more. I'm just thinking about how it relates to me and I'm getting ready to interject, right? How frustrating is that when you're around people like that they never ever say, oh, wow, that's crazy. How did that happen? They just say, oh, wow, when I was this age, I had this, and this, and they always make it about them. It is so off-putting, isn't it?
It is. And too, that so much of that is just based out of fear. And I think as I got older, you'd be in a group of people and you'd be trying to, like, somebody would say something like, oh yeah, you know what? I'd love to share this. And then that moment passes and you're like, oh, dang. So the whole time, all you're thinking about is like, where can I fit in this group that I don't really feel comfortable with? And I've missed the whole conversation.
So yeah, I think we've all done that. I've done that so many times. The thing that I've learned to do is, because as I started to transition my personality to say, okay, why do I feel pressure to interject in this conversation, to not be left out? Like I have to say something good. I started to shift it to, if I can focus on them, what question can I ask that will draw a little more out? That'll be interesting. And so then it's just learning how to ask that, well, how did that work? And so you said this, and I'll repeat back what they said. That shows that I'm connecting and I'm listening. And then how did this work? And I always try to, I think there's some, doing what I do with kids and being a total geek and loving human interaction, human personalities, and the scientific part of it. I'm trying to take the conversation in a way that is going to be beneficial for everybody to learn something. So I want to get to the depths of like, well, why do you do this? And how'd you feel when that happened? Like, how did it feel? How did it work? That's the fun part for me. And I think then the conversation gets ripped deeper instead of just at the surface level. So, okay. So we got to take another commercial break. And as we do, I just want to encourage you, if you're thinking of ways that you want to tweak your personality, I'm so glad, because that's the whole point of this whole series we're talking about in this show. Do me a favor. If it's been beneficial, share this with somebody else. You can share it through text. You can share it through YouTube, anywhere this platform is streamed. We'll be right back after this.
Five Star Life offers year-round programs for kids at our 350-acre training facility that we call Summit. These programs focus on 3 core components. First, each program includes lessons from our curriculum that targets kids' mindset. Secondly, each program teaches a skill like equine, archery, blacksmithing, basketball, fishing, boating, and many more. Thirdly, our programs connect kids to mentors we call coaches, who are trained to help kids live a 5-star life. Go to 5starlife.org to learn more or sign up your kids.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, joined via Zoom with my co-host, Coach Mia.
Thanks, Seth.
And we're talking about personality, our personal reality. And it's so fun to think about. I hope that our listening audience, I hope that this has been fun for you to think about maybe some of the rough edges of your personality, or some of the darker sides, or things you maybe don't like about who you are. I hope this show has been encouraging so that you can change. That's what we're trying to create for kids, this environment where they can grow and change and evolve and experience true connection, true relationships, thriving friendships. Because we know we have thriving friendships, we know that our mental health improves, we know that we're at peace, we know that there's a deeper sense of joy and belonging. We also know that we're going to live longer and our quality of life is going to be better. So there's like these numerous ways that connections make our lives richer. But we also know that these relationships, they come and go or are limited based on our personality that either says, well, I'm just a homebody. Well, I'm just a loner. Well, I'm shy. Well, I'm moody. Well, I'm just really blunt, or I have an anger issue, or what, all those things that wrap up our personality. Let's just make a commitment to saying, I'm not going to let the excuses sabotage me from being the best version of myself, having the personality that I want to have, even that I will admire in myself. Because I think there's something about when you like yourself, that helps you connect with people even more. When you're comfortable with yourself.
Absolutely. And I think when you enjoy your personality, I think too, you can accept other, flaws that you might have or that you see in the mirror, because you can, I just think it really sets you up to be just the best version of yourself.
And I think when we can be gracious to ourselves, and when we can be aware of maybe the areas that we want to grow in, I think when we give ourselves grace, but also say, I want to change, that same, however we treat ourselves also becomes the foundational way that we treat others. And so when we're super critical of our personality, which that's a good point to make. This is not pick on yourself day. That's not what this is about. It's not to be critical of your personality. It's just to be aware of, man, I would like to be more kind, or I'd like to be a little softer. I'd like to be more open for business. Like, I think that's the goal. It's not to be critical and get into this negativity, because I think when we do that, I think the most critical, when we're really critical of ourselves, we become really critical of others too. And it's funny. I've just had this conversation with my kids one of my sons last week, and he was talking about his friends, how annoying they are. And I'm like, well, one, you may need to find some new friends, but you also need to look inside, because people are annoying. I mean, like, there's one of two ways to look at people. They're amazing, or you can find every flaw. I mean, every time you meet somebody, you can find flaws, but we find what we're looking for. And so if you're looking for what interests you, if you're looking for the gold, you find it. If you're looking for the things that are annoying, you find it. If you look for the personality defects, you find it. And so again, going back to showing respect to people, I mean, it'd be really disrespectful if we verbalized all the disrespectful thoughts, the critical thoughts we had about people when they're standing in front of us. We would consider that to be a disrespectful, obnoxious person. But if we're sitting there in the conversation thinking it, well, maybe we need to check ourselves and say, why am I going there? It's one thing to say, oh, wow, they are really into themselves, but that's another thing to say, you know what? I'm gonna extrapolate everything I can to this conversation in the moment, and there's a reason they're all about themselves right now. I'm gonna find out what that is. I'm gonna find out what makes them tick. They're interesting. And I can walk away from just every conversation thinking, okay, this person is absolutely amazing, and maybe, just like me, they're in process. And I'm going to give them grace where they're at. That's how you build many, many, many relationships without judging them and putting them in a box somewhere. They're in process.
That's really good. But I think that is, I mean, it's truly just a mind shift of dealing with, and it's not all people, because you know what, we all love who we love. You know, you love to be around the people that, you know, are easy and funny and really feed you. And it takes a little work for you to, you know, give to them, I guess. So it's just a mind shift of the people that aren't that easy, but you know what you want in your life, and we all have them. Some of them are family members.
100%. There's this story that totally ties into this. There was a woman who had dinner back-to-back weekends, one Friday night with one British political person running for prime minister. And so these two candidates, she happened to be in this crazy position where she had a dinner date with both of them on different weekends. And she was asked, what was that like? And she said, well, the first person, I thought he was the most brilliant, amazing person in the world. I'm like, this guy is going to be the prime minister. He's amazing. He's incredible. Like, wow, impressive. Most impressive person I've ever met in my life. And she said that the second person, I left that night thinking I was the most impressive, most important person in the world. And guess who won the election? The person who made her feel like she was the most impressive, important person in the world. And it's such a phenomenon. His name was Benjamin Disraeli. He was the British prime minister. And just absolutely brilliant I think feedback from that woman. You think about that. I think that might be a personality shaping thought for some of us to put in the back of our minds when we're with people. What is our focus? Are we focused on making ourselves be really important and trying to impress that person so that they'll like us, so that they'll have a really good and will it leave a good impression on them? Or is our focus on just pouring into that person and making sure they leave feeling heard and valued and encouraged for their next step, whatever that is? There's a huge difference in focus. One is focused on self. The other is focused on others. And I would say, I think all of us could say probably the most respectful mindset would be, man, I'm going to be others focused. That's really honoring to live your life that way.
Too, it doesn't take just a dinner. It can be just a, quick interaction when you meet somebody. We all have those people that, I have friends that have met President Bill Clinton, and they were like, my husband was like, he makes you feel like you are the only person in the room. He's like, he was amazing. And it's like, you know what? It's like, don't we all want to have that legacy?
Yes, we all do. We all want to, but I think we don't know how to go about it, right? So we think impress. I've got to post these pictures. I got to show the world how impressive my life is and how good that I am and how smart I am and all those things. And it's like, at the end of the day, people just want to know that you care about them, right? So, all right, it's been a fun show. And this whole series in personality is powerful. I hope that you as the listening audience have enjoyed this. And I would just ask you to do one thing. Would you consider sharing this either on social media or with people in your world? We're trying to help people. We're trying to give them something to think about. And we're trying to change the face of education, of sports and culture. So one of the things that I'd ask you to do, this is a great time of year to be thinking about bringing this to a community or a school group near you and making sure kids have access to what we do at 5 Star Life. You can go to 5starlife.org to learn more. And thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
At 5 Star Life, we are changing the face of culture through education and sports by changing the most important piece of a human being's life, their mindset. If you are interested in being a part of our journey, please visit 5starlife.org for more information on volunteer and donation opportunities.